I dug a child's coffin out of my boss's rose garden at 3 in the morning, and the boy inside was still breathing. That was the night everyone thought God had chosen me to be a hero, and the same night someone in that house quietly decided I had to be destroyed. If it were you standing there with dirt under your nails and a half-dead 6-year-old in your arms, what would you have done? My name is Maya Collins, and this is not a ghost story. It is not a script somebody dreamed up for views. This is how one sound in the middle of the night turned my whole life into a crime scene. I used to think rich houses were safe, big gates, perfect lawns, cameras on every corner, but safety is just a feeling people with money know how to sell. Underneath some of those houses rot. I worked for the Whitmore family, and before everything went insane, it was simple, at least on paper. Richard Whitmore, billionaire investor, clean suits, nice, polite voice, a man who signed million-dollar contracts while his coffee was still hot. His kids, Sophie and Ethan, the only truly innocent things in that place. Sophie was 8, careful with her words like she was afraid to break them. Ethan was 6, loud, clingy, with a laugh that bounced off those cold marble floors. Their mother had died a couple years before I arrived. People lowered their voices when they mentioned her like the walls would get offended. Then there was Vanessa, Richard's fiancée. Later I would learn that was just one of her names. On the surface she was flawless, the kind of woman magazines love, sleek, dark hair, smooth voice, dresses that never wrinkled. She hugged the kids for the cameras, remembered everyone's birthday, talked about charity, quoted Bible verses at dinner. The first months I believed she loved those children. I was wrong. That night started like any other long day. I had scrubbed the kitchen until the counters shone, loaded the dishwasher, packed Sophie and Ethan's school things for the morning, laid out. Richard's jacket checked the doors. The house was quiet in that heavy, rich way, all the noise swallowed up by expensive rugs and closed doors. The only light near me was the little lamp outside my small room by the back hallway. I took a shower, changed into an old cotton robe, lay down on that narrow bed, and tried to exhale the whole day out of my body. Sleep did not come. That wired, kind of tired, where your bones ache, but your brain keeps replaying conversations. That was me. Somewhere around 2:30, I finally started to drift, and that is when I heard it. At first, it was so soft I thought I had imagined it, just a muffled sound under the steady hum of the air conditioner. I held my breath. It came again. Not a pipe, not the fridge, not the house settling. A whimper. It sounded far away and wrong, like someone crying with a pillow over their face. I sat up, heart in my throat, listening. The hallway was dark. The kids' rooms were upstairs. This sound was not coming from there. It was coming from out back. I swung my legs off of the bed and crept to the small window at the end of the service hall. The yard lay under silver-blue moonlight. The fountain, the trimmed hedges, the ridiculous rose garden Vanessa loved more than she loved people. She called it her sanctuary. I had been in that dirt that afternoon, raking, clearing leaves, flattening every line the way she wanted. So when I saw a patch of soil that looked wrong, darker, uneven, clumped, my body knew before my mind did that something had been disturbed there. Then I heard it again, faint, strangled from that exact spot. I am not a cop. I am not a superhero. I am a maid who sends half her paycheck home to her mom. I told myself it is an animal, Maya, a raccoon, a dog, something trapped. But my skin was crawling. My hands were already moving before I made the decision. I slid into my sneakers without socks, pulled the robe tighter, slipped down the back stairs so the wood would not creak. The house stayed silent behind me when I opened the kitchen door and stepped into the cold air. My feet sank a little into the grass, still wet. The garden smelled too sweet, like perfume hiding something rotten. I walked toward the wrong patch of soil, each step heavier, the sound growing sharper. A dull thump, a choked cry that could not possibly be where it seemed to be. I stopped over, it dropped to a crouch, pressed my ear to the ground like some crazy person. There under the dirt was the weakest little scraping sound. That is the moment my heart flipped. No rational explanation left. Someone was under there. In that second, I had a choice. Run inside, wake up my billionaire boss and his perfect fiancée, call security, call the police, and lose minutes I felt in my bones we did not have. Or move. If it were you with that sound in your ears, what would you have done? I ran for the shed, grabbed the first shovel I could find, metal so cold it burned my fingers. I ran back, drove it into the soft dirt. It sank way too easy. Shovel lift, toss, my breath loud, my arms shaking. The smell of wet earth hit me in waves. I dug until the shovel struck something solid. Wood. Everything inside me went quiet, like my body braced for a truth it did not want. I dropped the shovel, clawed at the dirt until my nails caught the corner of a small box, roughly the size you never want to see in real life. I cleared enough to see the lid, slid my fingers to the edge, and yanked. The lid stuck, then popped with a crack that felt like it split the whole night in half. Inside his small face, pale under smeared dirt, his lashes, clumped lips bluish, lay Ethan. His chest barely moved the faintest flutter. For a second, the world narrowed down to that impossible image. The boy who had asked me for extra cookies before bed, lying in a box under his mother's roses. I think I said his name, or maybe I just screamed. I reached in, pulled him up, his body limp and cold against my chest. "Ethan, baby, breathe, come on." I kept saying it, half prayer, half command. There was no plan. My legs just took off. I ran barefoot across the yard, through the open gate, down the street, holding him like he would fall apart if I loosened my grip. 6 blocks to the hospital felt like a marathon, my lungs burning, vision blurred, arms numb. Streetlights streaked by, no cars, no help, just me and a half-dead child. I crashed through the ER doors, shouting, "Help! He is alive! Someone buried him!" Nurses rushed in. Doctors grabbed him from my arms. Voices overlapped. "BP low. Oxygen. Get a crash cart." And I stumbled back against the wall, shaking so hard I could feel my teeth clicking. Dirt under my nails, blood pounding in my ears, robe-smeared hair wild. A crazy maid with a wild story. I do not know how long I stood there. Eventually a doctor came over, eyes tired but kind. "He is breathing," he said. "Weak, but he is fighting. Another hour and..." He didn't finish. So that was it, right? I had done something good. That should have been the end of the story. It was not. Richard arrived looking like a man whose soul had been ripped out. Shirt half-buttoned, no tie, expensive shoes not matching. "Where is my son?" he demanded. When he saw me covered in dirt, he came right over. "Maya, what happened?" I told him. All of it. The sound, the soil, the box. His eyes went glassy, then sharp, trying to piece it together. Before he could, she arrived. Vanessa floated in like a scene from a movie, hair in place, shawl around her shoulders, eyes wide and glossy, but without a single smudge. "Where is Ethan?" she asked, voice tight, controlled. The nurse explained he was stable but fragile. Then Vanessa looked at me. "You dug him up," she said. "Yes, ma'am," I answered, my voice still shaking. "I heard something. I went to check. In the middle of the night, instead of waking us, you went outside alone and started digging up our garden," she said, each phrase like she was arranging props on a table. Richard cut in. "Vanessa, she saved him." She placed a hand on his arm. "Of course. Thank you, Maya. Truly." But her eyes never matched the gratitude in her voice. There was something measuring in them, something like, "How do I use this?" Enter Detective Ramirez. County homicide, 20 years, and the kind of man who has seen every version of every lie. He took my statement in the hospital cafeteria while my hands still smelled like the grave I had just opened. I told him step by step what I had heard, what I had done. "So, you just happened to hear a sound," he said slowly, "from underground, and knew exactly where to dig." "I followed the noise," I said. "Sir, I know that garden. I cleaned it. That patch was wrong." "You live alone on this property?" "Yes." "You did not call anyone?" "There wasn't time." He wrote in his notebook, eyes on my face, not his pen. "Right now, everyone is a witness," he said, "and everyone is a suspect." That is the moment I realized saving Ethan did not put me on a pedestal. It put me on a list. By the time we got back to the mansion, yellow tape cut across the roses. Crime scene techs moved around like ghosts. The rest of the staff stared from a distance. I stood by the back door, arms wrapped around myself, watching them document the hole I had made. Vanessa stayed close to the detective, quiet, cooperative, letting little things slip in the softest voice. Maya is devoted detective. She truly loves the children. Sometimes a little too much. A small nervous laugh. "She walks at night, you know, we thought it was insomnia. She is emotional but loyal. I just hope..." Then she let the sentence die like she was too polite to suggest the terrible thing she was suggesting. "Do you see the game? She never had to point at me and say she did it. She just had to plant the idea that I could." That night I could not sleep. I lay in my uniform on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, feeling the whole house breathing around me. Every creak sounded like a footstep. My own heartbeat was too loud. Around 2 in the morning, a soft knock came at my door. I opened it. Vanessa stood there in a silk robe, hair falling loose, bare feet. She looked like a magazine cover actor playing sadness. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside because people like me do not tell people like her no. She sat on the edge of my bed, looking around my little room like it was a hotel she might rate 3 stars. "I cannot sleep either," she said. "Can you imagine my son in the ground?" A tiny tremor in her voice. no tears in her eyes. I did what I could, I managed. You were very brave, she said, then tilted her head. And very intuitive. I frowned. I heard him. So you keep saying, she whispered. Then she leaned in just a little closer. Be careful with that story, Maya. People might find it difficult to believe. Instinct can sound a lot like obsession. Something in my chest went tight. I would never hurt Ethan, I said. She smiled slow. I know what I believe. I just worry what others might think. She left my room with a soft good night that felt like a threat. That was the first time I truly felt afraid of her. The next morning I walked into a different house. Carmen, who always saved extra pancakes for me, would not meet my eyes. Jose, who used to joke about running away with the company car, suddenly had somewhere else to be when I walked in. Whispers floated behind my back, cut off when I turned. At breakfast, Vanessa sat at the head of the table like she already owned it. Richard sat beside her, eyes hollow. I stood by the counter pouring coffee when she said, light as air. Detective Ramirez will be stopping by again. He wants to go over your timeline. You do remember exactly when you went outside, right, Maya? We would not want any confusion. Her smile lingered too long. Later that day, Sophie appeared in the laundry room clutching her stuffed rabbit. Maya, she whispered, am I in trouble? I knelt down. Of course not. Her eyes were red. Vanessa said Ethan might not come home because God takes little boys who lie. She said it is my fault because I shouted at him before bed. She said my real mom in heaven is sad because of me. My stomach turned to stone. Hey, look at me, I said, taking her face in my hands. Nothing that happened is your fault. Your mom loved you. God is not punishing you. Anyone who says that is wrong, do you hear me? You believe me, she asked, voice barely there. With everything in me. Then why does she say you are dangerous? I could not answer that. I just held her. Inside, something ugly snapped into focus. Vanessa was not just rewriting the story for police, she was rewriting it in a child's mind too. That night, Sophie came back to my door. I saw her, she said, in the garden, late, with a flashlight. Her hands were dirty. I waited until the house was dead quiet, then slipped outside. The roses glowed under security lights. At the far edge where Sophie had pointed the soil had that same too perfect, too fresh look. I knelt, pressed my fingers in, dug. Less than an inch down, my nails hit plastic. It was a pill bottle. Diazepam, strong sedative, half empty. I stared at the label in the pale light, my hands shaking. That was our missing piece. Ethan had not just wandered into a box. He had been put there. The next afternoon on my break, I went to my friend Lucy's small apartment across town and borrowed her laptop. I typed Vanessa Whitmore first. Everything that popped up looked clean: charity luncheons, foundation work, interviews about blending a family after loss. Then I did something else. I took a still from one of those articles, ran it through a search tool Lucy showed me, and the internet did what the rich house could not hide. Up came an article in Spanish, 3 years old. Same face, different name. Elena Cortez. Accused, not convicted, of getting close to wealthy widowers in South America, marrying into families where children stood between her and fortunes, then conveniently those children ended up sick, missing, dead. Investigations opened, then closed when she vanished. My blood ran cold. The room tilted. That perfect voice, that scripted grief, the poison in Sophie's mind, the box in the garden, it all lined up. That was the twist. This was bigger than me, bigger than one night. I was standing in the middle of a pattern. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. I went back to the mansion with my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I photographed everything: the pill bottle, the disturbed soil, screenshots of the article. That night in my room, I used a throwaway email and sent it all to Detective Ramirez with a message. Look at her other name. Look at the sedatives. She is setting me up. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You should not snoop, Maya. Second text. Curiosity kills. My hands went numb. Somebody was close enough to watch me and bold enough to toy with me. Around midnight, footsteps stopped at my door again. I grabbed a metal candle holder, every muscle ready to swing. Maya, it's me, Richard whispered. I opened the door. He looked wrecked. The detective got an anonymous email, he said quietly. Files on Vanessa. Is that you? I let him see my phone, the article. Her name is not just Vanessa, I said. She is Elena Cortez. She has done this before. She drugs the kids. She makes it look like accidents. She cleans up. She leaves. He stared at the screen, denial and horror fighting in his face. This is insane, he muttered, but his voice broke on the last word. She buried your son, I said softly. She planted drugs and photos to pin it on me. If you ignore this, it will be Sophie next. For a second, the man who made billion-dollar decisions looked completely lost. Then we both heard it, the faint creak of the back door. We went to the window. Through the glass, we saw a shadow crossing the lawn. Vanessa Robe pulled tight, shovel in hand, walking toward the garden. We followed the night air, cold needles against my skin. Richard's flashlight cut a white circle across the roses. There she was at the far edge, kneeling, pushing something into the earth. "Vanessa!" he shouted. She stiffened, then turned slowly. In the beam, her face was smooth, composed. "Richard, you scared me," she said. "What are you doing?" he demanded. She smiled that small, controlled smile. "Just burying the past," she said. That phrase washed over me like ice. "Is that what you told the other families too?" I asked. For a heartbeat, her eyes went flat. She stepped toward us. In her right hand, I saw the glint of a syringe. "You really should have stayed in your place, Maya," she said almost kindly. Richard pulled me back. For once, he had seen too much to pretend. Vanessa stopped, evaluated the distance, then let the syringe slip into her pocket. "You look tired," she said to him. "We can talk in the morning." The next day should have been peaceful. Ethan had started to move a little more at the hospital. Instead, Vanessa went there early with a bouquet, all white lilies, white dress, white mask. I knew where she was going before I admitted it to myself. That is why I borrowed a faded janitor uniform from a friend and walked through the hospital like I belonged, mop bucket rattling in front of me. My heart beat so hard it made my vision pulse. When I reached Ethan's room, the door was cracked. I heard her voice. "Poor baby," she whispered, standing by his bed. Through the gap, I saw her fingers toy with a syringe, tracing the line of his IV. "Vanessa," I said, pushing the door fully open. She turned, and for the first time, there was no performance, no glossy sadness, just annoyance like she was caught in traffic. "You really do not know when to stop," she said. "I could have made it quick for you." "Why him?" I asked. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. She glanced at the boy. "He saw me mixing the sedatives," she said. "He woke up. Children are inconvenient when they remember the wrong things." "You buried a child alive," I said. "It was temporary," she snapped. "Until after the gas leak. Grief, tragedy, sympathy, we all move on. And you ruined the plan." She took a step toward the IV line. I did not plan to be brave. I just moved. I grabbed her wrist. The syringe slipped, clattered, rolled under the bed. She slapped me, claws out. We slammed into the rail. Ethan's monitors spiked alarms, screamed. Nurses shouted in the corridor. Then in the middle of all that chaos, a tiny voice came through. "Stop!" We froze. Ethan's eyes were open, dazed, terrified. He looked at me, then at her. "You put me in the box," he whispered. The room turned to stone. 2 nurses burst in with a security guard. Vanessa opened her mouth, pretty lie already forming. Ethan forced the words out a second time. "She buried me. She put me in the box." You could see it hit everyone in that room at once. The guard grabbed her arms. She tried one more time with the sweet voice. "He is confused. He is drugged. Maya attacked me." But it was done. And when Detective Ramirez arrived and I put my phone and the pill bottle and the screenshots of Elena Cortez in his hand, something shifted in his eyes. He nodded once. "That is enough," he said. They led her away in cuffs. As she passed me, she leaned in just enough. "Enjoy your happy ending, Maya," she hissed. "It will not last." Yeah, that happened. Weeks later, the news called me the maid who saved the billionaire's son. People in comment sections wrote things like, "I would have done the same," from the safety of their couches. Some meant it. A lot of them did not understand the part that came after. Ethan had nightmares. He woke up choking on air that was no longer dirt. Sophie needed therapy to unravel all the poison Vanessa had poured into her. Richard had to sit in court and listen to stories from other families about a woman with the same face and different names. I stayed. I packed lunches, sat by hospital beds, walked Sophie to school, stood near Ethan when he panicked in small spaces. One evening when things were finally less raw, Richard asked me to sit. "You did more for this family than anyone," he said. "I cannot pay that back, but I can try to make sure you are never at the mercy of someone like her again." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a legal agreement, a salary that did not feel like charity, a small guest house on the property signed over in my name. I looked at him, then at his kids building a puzzle on the floor. "I am not here for the money," I said. "I am here for them. If this ever feels like ownership instead of gratitude, I am gone." He nodded. "Fair." Months later at the trial, I watched Vanessa, or Elena, or whatever name she woke up with that day, sit in that defendant's chair like she still believed she was smarter than everyone. But the evidence stacked and the testimonies came, and Ethan, small but steady, told the court in his own words about the box and the voice he heard above him calling his name. The jury came back fast. Guilty. Multiple counts. Life with no parole. Outside the courthouse, Sophie slipped her hand into mine. "Are we safe now?" she asked. I took a long breath. The sun was out, people were talking all around us, reporters yelling questions that had nothing to do with what mattered. "We are safer," I said. "And if anyone like her ever comes near you again, they get through me first." Ethan tugged my sleeve. "Can we go home?" he asked. "I want to show you the new flowers." Back at the estate, the rose garden was gone. In its place were wildflowers the kids picked out themselves. No straight lines, no perfect control, just color, life. Sometimes I stand there early in the morning and think about how close that place came to being just another pretty graveyard for the truth. Now here is where I want to make something clear, because this is the part people argue about. If I had followed protocol that night, woken the right people, called the right numbers, respected the right lines of authority, Ethan would be dead. We all know it. I would have screamed that I heard something. They would have told me I was tired, dramatic, confused. An hour later, there would have been a real coffin and a very different speech. People still ask me, "But how did you know where to dig?" That is strange. Like the miracle is more suspicious than the monster. That is what money and appearances do. They bend reality until the wrong person looks dangerous. So I want to hear from you. Do you think I crossed a line when I grabbed that shovel, when I accused the woman everyone respected, when I went behind my boss's back to the police? Or was that the one line no one should ever be afraid to cross? Do you think if Ethan had not woken up in that hospital and pointed at her, they would have believed me a maid with a gut feeling over a polished philanthropist with a perfect record? Tell me in the comments. Be honest. Argue with me. Tell me what you would have done at that garden. Tell me if you have ever watched someone dangerous get protected because they looked right, talked right, had the right last name. Stories like this do not just happen in mansions on hills. They happen in apartments, schools, churches, offices. If this story made you feel anything, angry, relieved, scared, hopeful, hit like so more people hear it. Make sure you are subscribed and share it with someone who still believes monsters always look like monsters. And if you have a story where you saw behind someone's perfect mask and nobody believed you, this is your space. Put it below. I am listening.